to find out if this new FMS FCX24 Dodge Power Wagon Brushless is worth the expensive price tag. Well, in this review we'll be finding out. I'll be telling you about the exterior, we'll be looking under the body, we'll take it for a drive on my off-road course, and then we'll come back for Markus's mark. So let's get right into it. Hi everybody and welcome to RC Galaxy Reviews. Today I bring you a new review of this FMS FCX24 Dodge Power Wagon Brushless. A few weeks ago, FMS released the FCX18 LC80 Brushless offers, and now they've released the two FCX24 brushless models. The K5 has a brushless model now, and so does the Power Wagon. I'm happy to say that this is a big upgrade. Now I have two other FCX24 models from FMS that I have not reviewed on my channel, but I've been driving them and this car has far better performance. My K5 Blazer is still stock with the normal non-oil filled shocks and it's super bouncy, and in my opinion it's not a great performer. But this new car is a game changer. So let's start by talking about pricing and exterior design. So the FMS FCX24 Dodge Power Wagon has a price tag of $179 US. That is really expensive for a 24 scale, but like I said, it does have a new brushless system, power, and so much other things which do really upgrade the vehicle. This Power Wagon comes in this one color. It is a kind of teal greenish blue. I do like it, but it does pop quite a lot. And then it is two-tone. At the back we have a matte black finish right here for the bed. Now this vehicle is not fully licensed. It does not have any licensing by Dodge. But in my opinion, the body is pretty cool. We have these lights, but for some reason, I'm usually with these new transmitters that FMS offers on the FCX18, this channel 4 is what turns the lights on. But mine, for some reason, does not work, even though the lights are fully connected. So it might be a default on my model, or FMS changed something that I do not know about. Here at the front, we have these really bold, big fenders right here. These really big and thick, grippy tires. I've been driving them and they do really well on rocks, but on loose terrains, they do struggle quite a bit. They are definitely quite thick and they do have foam in them. And we also have these really nicely damped oil-filled shocks. Now they are a tiny bit on the stiff side, but for the most part, they do a good job absorbing. Now here we have these two windshield wipers, and then on the side, we have this kind of snorkel, a big step right there, and then at the rear we don't have any lights, but we do have a bed. Now there are these three humps, which definitely compromise the space amounts if you do want to put storage inside them. But overall, I think that it looks great, and we also have two license holders at the front, which I think looks pretty cool. And now, let's pop the underbody and we'll check out the new brushless motor, ESC, and so much more. Okay, now to access the under of the Dodge Power Wagon, this release mechanism is definitely not my favorite, but it does the job. So when the vehicle arrived, it took a lot of strength to get it to open. I needed to use my dad's help because it was so hard and tight. But now once it's opened, it's actually very loose and it doesn't hold on. So if I'm driving on something like a bumpy terrain, which is what most people are going to do with this car, sometimes the body just falls off and it doesn't hold on tightly, which is really disappointing because it makes a lot of noise, it bounces around, and sometimes if you're just holding it by the top, it'll fall off. Or if you're trying to get something out like this, it'll fall off. So that is definitely not very good. Now we have these four release mechanisms, two right here. So you just push these in, and then this one right here at the front, you do the opposite way. So you're going to pull outwards. And then there we go. It comes off. And now once the body is off, we have our Outrunner Brushless Motor, which is really good. It has amazing slow crawl. Now there is no cockpit inside, so it's definitely not that scale from that aspect. Here we have our gear, transmission gear servo, and then our battery, which is strapped in right here. Now this battery is a 7.4 volt, 380 milliamp 2S LiPo battery. I see this on all of FMS 24 scales. and then we're just going to strap that back in, just like that. Here we have our ESC. It is orange, which is definitely quite different. And then we have our lights, which are it's actually quite a lot of lighting, even though it's just lights without any signals or anything. And because in all of FMS videos about this car, it looks like the light feature is really, really cool, but I'm quite disappointed that mine does not work. Now to turn the vehicle on, we need to connect these two right here, and then there is our transmitter that we turn to on, and then under here there is a white button right under here. It's definitely kind of an awkward position, and then we press that and it turns on. Now it is really close to the servo, so that kind of sometimes it does hit, but it is very unusual for that to happen. Okay, so now you can see right there, to put the body on, sometimes it doesn't work, like you just saw. And now that we flip the car over, we have portal axles, which ensures great and very good ground clearance right there. The portal gears are metal. We have metal links right here, and the platform is very short. As you can see, everything is quite close to each other. So in some ways, like when you're going up a steep hill, it's not good because it doesn't perform as well as cars with longer wheelbases. Now, the car also has a very high strength nylon fiber unibody frame. It does scratch, but that is because there is no protection and it is quite round. So once it flips, it does flip a couple of times. Now we do have full ball bearings right there. And then we also have our 2-speed transmission, which I really do like that FMS offers. Now here, I'll show you the first speed gear. That is definitely on the slow side, but if you do need to go faster, we have second gear, which is really quick. It's really good for trails, and that is really impressive for a 24 scale. For the slow crawl in first gear, you can see that it is excellent. It's very slow. Now let's talk about the transmitter. So FMS previously used a different transmitter on their 24 scales, but for the brushless models of the 24s, they used this new transmitter, which is used on their FCX18 platform. Now here we have, for the transmitter, it calls for 4 AAA batteries, and that is what the transmitter runs on. Here we do have quite a lot of adjustments. Our on-off button, throttle trim, which adjusts how much throttle you use. It adjusts, you can drive fully self without you touching anything. So if you want to crawl over something like this, you don't have to touch anything, and the car will crawl over it. So that is quite a cool feature to have. And then I'll just turn that off. And then for the throttle drive, that controls how much throttle that you can use. So if I put it to the lowest, this is full throttle and it's very slow. So that might be something good to use if you have still children that are learning or something similar to that. For the steering trim, that adjusts the angle. So if it comes and it's not exactly straight, you can just adjust it to how you would like it, to your preference. And then for steering drive, this is full steering at the max, and then you can turn it and it'll get less and less and less. So that is really good that you have quite a lot of adjustments. We have the steering right here that goes the opposite way. So you'll steer when usually it would go right, it goes left instead. And then for the throttle trim, it's to go, when you usually go back, it actually goes forward. I've never used this, so I think it is it's not very useful in my opinion, but I guess some people do like that. Here for channel 3, we have the first gear on the left. In the middle, it is neutral. So that is just neutral, it doesn't drive. And then to the very right is second gear. And I suppose that channel 4 should be for the light control, like I said. Also, for my hands, the controller fits really well. I'm able to drive one-handed, and it has these little nooks right here so I can control and my hands do not slip, which I really like. I do really like this transmitter that FMS offers, so I'm really glad that they switched from the previous one. Now let's take a look at the drag brake, approach and departure angles, and driving experience. Let's first talk about the drag brake. Now, because this low crawl is so excellent, I haven't used the drag brake yet, but I did use it on the LC80 brushless, so I assume that this will perform the same, and that drag brake was pretty good. Now, something that I did notice about the approach and departure angles is this front bumper definitely compromises it very slightly, but even with this bumper, it does have a pretty good approach angles here. And then for the back, the departure angles, because the overhang at the back is definitely kind of long, it does hit quite often here, and then there is a little bit of a longer area that comes down more, and so it sometimes gets caught there. But the ground clearance, it is pretty high, and I do, because of the short wheelbase, I am able to get through things that are pretty tall, which is good, and that is one benefit of having a short wheelbase. And now for the body control, the car is definitely quite top heavy. It does flip quite often, so it definitely would benefit from some brass weights. Let's see how it performs on our little test, our flex test. So we'll turn right here. You can see that I do have a little bit of dirt in it, and it did slip, so we'll try one more time. Nice, good flex right there. It is doing really well. It's nice and quiet, and then as we come up, good. You can see that we did bottom out right there. And then as I come down, keeping a nice consistent crawl, and then you can see it does hit, and then there we go. So pretty good, and I do hope you get to see a little bit more of the performance of this car. I hope you enjoy the driving footage, and I'll see you back for Markus's Marks. a 45-degree ascent with the FMS FCX24 Dodge Power Wagon. Now, I did say that the car is not good on ascents, but it actually seems like it's doing well, slipping a little bit. But that is a pass for the Power Wagon. Now let's back down and then let's see in second gear if we can go without as much slipping. So that is definitely better. So that is good. Now let's do a descent. You can see that it is quite front heavy and that's why it flipped over. Now let's do a speed test. We're in first gear. Like I said, it's definitely quite slow. And this is second gear. Very quick. Let's do a turning radius test. It's not the best I've seen, but it is pretty good. We are back from Markus's Marks. I hope you enjoyed the driving footage, and now let's get right into it. Now for exterior design, the FMS FCX24 Dodge Power Wagon gets a score of 7 out of 10. Now the exterior design definitely will not be for all tastes, especially this really bright color. And we also have this black two-tone back, which does kind of look a little bit weird. Another thing I noticed is it has this weird back window, which definitely doesn't look really good in my opinion. It is really small, and then we have this just wall right here around it, and in my opinion it doesn't look very good. Now for chassis design, it gets a score of 8 out of 10. Like I said, sometimes the body is really loose. Let's see if it is right now. Yep, came off very easily, and it is quite good. Now, I have done a little bit of modifications to one of my 24 scales, and it is relatively easy. Now, because all the components are in the front, it is definitely a little bit heavy for the front, but it also is heavy on the back, and for some reason, and so it doesn't do well on ascents or descents because of the short wheelbase. Now, for crawling capabilities, it gets a score of 8 out of 10. Now the tires are nice and grippy, they do work really well. The suspension is nicely damped, it absorbs bumps relatively well, and the car does do really good on rocks, but it doesn't do really well on loose terrains, which is what I found. Now for the value score, it gets a score of 8 out of 10. Now compared to an SCX24 that is about $140 to $150, this car with a brushless motor, ESC, big chunky tires, and a 2-speed transmission is a good deal, but $180, you could get a Red Ascent 18 for $130, which is an 18 scale, and it has better performance than this. But for a 24 scale, I think this is pretty good. I also think, why would you buy a SCX24 or something similar to that and then modify it up with a brushless motor when you can get a stock Power Wagon which performs really well? I think that this car is a pretty good deal compared to the 24 scales in its class. It is also definitely quite bigger, and I would consider this more of an 18 scale size than a 24 scale. Now for the personal score, it gets a score of 8 out of 10. Now, this car is pretty good, and it is good for its value. It performs well, and it is a big upgrade over the 24 scales that are brushed and stock from FMS. It performs much better, and it feels like a whole new vehicle compared to them, in my opinion. So I think FMS did a great job on this car, but for comparison, like I said, you can buy a Red Ascent 18, which is not brushless, but it is $130, which is a lot less than this vehicle. And you could upgrade a brushless motor probably for the same price, and you would get better performance. Now also, the body is about an 18 scale size, so it is bigger than a 24 scale, and I would put this more in the 18 scale class than the 24 scale. For some comparison vehicles, you have the Red Ascent 18, we have the Axial Jeep Wrangler, and Jeep Gladiator, as well as basically all of Axial's lineup. We also have FMS FCX24 and the HPI Venture 18 brushless. But out of all of those, this car is the most expensive, but it's also the only brushless. Now, some mods that I would do is add some brass weights to this vehicle. But other than that, I think this is a pretty good vehicle, especially for stock. And I have been really impressed driving this for the past few days. Now, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you in another episode of RC Galaxy Reviews.